When I was a kid, from around the ages of 2 to 10, I always watched the same show after school. Dandy's Wondrous Adventures. It was a show that I had kept tabs on ever since I was a baby. It had been with me since the beginning, and for good reason. Even as an adult, I can point out the many lessons the show taught me as a boy. How to tie my shoes, how to properly eat, how to keep up conversations, etc. It was a much-needed show for a kid of my upbringing. My dad had died before I was born in a botched robbery, and my mother worked as a surgeon, meaning she was gone most of the day, coming back home around 9 to 10 at night. So, most of my youthful lessons were taught by the show. Every episode entered the same. Dandy, an anthropomorphic dandelion, and his sisters Rosie, Daisy, and Blue Bonnie would run up a hill, click their heels, which were leaves, face the viewer, and ask how their day had gone. They'd wait for about 5 seconds and would respond. If the episode was oriented around something happy, they'd all smile and say, "That's terrific." If it was oriented around something not happy, they'd all share a small look of unanimous dissatisfaction and say, "Well, ain't that a shame?" Every time I came home from school, I'd divulge into the characters on how my day went. I always would be disappointed when my response didn't match theirs, and it never did. I tallied the times I matched their response with mine, and I was down by 47 marks to my 0. Regardless, it was nice to see whatever my favorite cast of characters had in store for me that day. However, this static stream of constant enjoyment changed one afternoon. It was a rainy April day, and I had just gotten home after the torrent of watery sheets had ended its assault on me. I had no homework for the day, and after finishing all of my chores, I galloped upstairs to turn on my TV and pay a visit to my friends. Once again, the episode entered the same way, with Dandy and his sisters dancing up the hill, stopping, and asking me how my day had gone. My day had gone pretty poorly. At school, I had a teacher named Miss Carroll. I was the quiet, nerdy type in elementary school, so Miss Carroll saw me as easy pickings. She'd berate me day in and day out about how weird I was, how I had no friends, and how I was a loser. Any time I tried to report her, no one believed me. Usually I didn't respond, but today hurt a lot worse. One of my classmates told her about my dad, and used the newfound information as ammunition against me. She'd never hit me, but it felt like she did. It hurt. I confided with Dandy on the issue, how much I hated her, how rude she was, and my anger towards her for being such a jerk. In my endless tirade about how much I deplored her, it had slipped my mind that Dandy hadn't said anything. It had gone well over 5 seconds, but they didn't speak. No interruptions, no exclamations, nothing. Silence. Even the music had ceased. Once my rant had subsided, I turned to look at the TV. Their expressions were not the usual ones they wore. They didn't look happy or mildly sad. No, they looked mad. All of them wore this expression of intense grimace, like someone had just told them off or stole something and gotten caught doing it. Dandy looked the angriest. "How rude," he said, his speech sounding as if his teeth were clenched. Blue Bonnie stepped up to the screen, her arms crossed, staring dead at me like a hawk. "People like that are just so bad, right?" she proclaimed. "You said it," they all announced. Slowly, their expressions of disdain faded. Dandy spoke up again. "Well, it's a good thing we're talking about bullies today, huh?" They all shook their heads in approval. The episode transitioned to a school area, where they all gathered in what I would guess was the cafeteria. It was rosily colored, with hints of bright pink, yellow, green, and red across all the furniture in the room, ranging from tables to art. Common colors for a kids' show. Rosie pointed at another flower. He wasn't a part of the usual cast, but they all regarded him with some level of knowledge. "That's Ms. Wilkins. She's the worst," Rosie exclaimed. She's the school bully here. And worst of all, she's a teacher. Everyone is scared of her, Daisy said. Dandy took his place in the center of the screen. To get a bully off of you, sometimes you have to teach them a good lesson. Give them a reason to think twice before messing with you. Right, guys? They all unanimously uttered and MHM before turning all at once to the screen. Blue Bonnie looked at everyone else. But won't you get in trouble for something like that? She said. They all looked at her before turning back to face me. To get a bully off of you? It's worth it. Their expressions then changed to one of a kinder look, smiling warmly at me before returning to the hill. They all joined in unison to wish me good luck for tomorrow, as they always did, before the credits rolled. I was stunned. It was like the universe had aligned at that exact moment to help me with my problem. But it was the wrong solution. As much as I despised her, it wasn't worth it to get in a whole load of trouble for fighting a teacher. What good would it do to help my problem anyway? I'd have to do some serious damage to her for the bullying to cease. A simple hit to the nose would just make my problems worse. It honestly felt like the advice they had given me was, for the first time, bad. By that moment, the constant pitter-patter of rain had lulled me into a drowsy mess. So I decided to take a quick nap and recuperate. My head touched the soft, comforting surface of my pillow, and I slipped away into my dreams. Around 7:30, I awoke to one hell of a wake-up call. Wake up! It was violent, aggressive, booming, as though a prison warden was waking up an inmate. There was no friendliness in the command, no leeway, just rage. I popped out of my bed like a meerkat that had sensed an impending threat. But when I did, I saw that the TV had been turned on. And there he was, Dandy. However, strangely enough, his sisters weren't there. The background was dark, nearly pitch black, with only the moon present in the frame. The grass that was usually bright had turned sickly, adorning a new, yellowish color. So you won't listen? Dandy said. His eyes furrowed into a deep, burning glare. We are trying to help you with a problem, like we have for years. I didn't know what to say. Felt as if my body was stuck. Was this sleep paralysis? Was it a dream? Do you not like us anymore? Before I could find the courage to stammer anything out, his sisters came into the shot. Because we don't like you. We never liked you. Their words burned, while my throat felt like it was held in place with barbed wire. Dandy moved forward. Maybe she's right. Maybe you are a loser. They all began to snicker, until it eventually devolved into laughter. They shot out snide remarks, comments about my hair, face, and anything they could latch onto. They even bit into my dad's death. He probably did it on purpose. Who would want to have a son like you? Rosie said. I bet he faked his death to get away from you. Blue Bonnie said. Or maybe he did it himself out of disappoint dash. Before Dandy could finish what he was going to say, I shut the TV off. I was a hot mess of tears, snot, and fear. Balled up on my bed. I couldn't bring myself to move until morning came. It was a Saturday, and Mom was at work still. She was the hospital's best surgeon, meaning there were quite a few weekends where she'd be gone for half the day. I wanted to get up out of bed to get breakfast, but I was still in shock after the incident the night prior. Was it a dream? Was it just my imagination? No, couldn't have been. I felt everything. All those words, insults, and crude remarks. I felt them all. After much thought, I finally crawled out of bed and went downstairs. The sky had cleared since yesterday, with a bright, beautiful hue of blue and yellow beaming down for all to enjoy. After eating a healthy bowl of cereal, I returned to my room and decided to see if I could get some gaming in. I usually gamed during the weekends anyway, as my mom didn't let me play during school days. After a couple hours on the console, A familiar, yet mellow voice snapped my attention back to the TV. "Hey, friend." It was Dandy again. In the past, that voice would be a source of comfort. Now it frightened me. I stood still, my head not daring to look back at the character who had become just as oppressive as my teacher. "Look at me, please." Dandy's voice wasn't violent this time. It had the same warm aura it had had before the previous night. He sounded apologetic. I slowly looked over my shoulder. They were all there this time. Dandy, Bonnie Blue, Daisy, and Rosie. But they weren't standing. They were sitting on the hill. The background had returned to its entrancing bright blue color, and the grass looked healthy again. Everything had returned to normal apart from the characters. Their faces now expressed a look of regret. A deep regret. "We're sorry, friend. We didn't mean to lash out like that," Bonnie Blue said, her eyes sporting a much brighter, kinder look. "It isn't you. It's us," Daisy said, her leafy hands clasped together in her lap. "We know you still like us. Really, we do," Rosie exclaimed. Dandy then took his turn to look at me, his character near the leftmost part of the frame. "We had an issue like you once. Ms. Wilkins would treat us badly. She hated every kid she saw in that school. But for us, she hated us the most." I moved from my chair to stand right in front of the TV, my ears, eyes, and mind completely intertwined with the screen in front of me. It was unbelievable. "She said that we were troubled children who deserved to be alone," Daisy said. "We had no parents of our own, so we relied on her," Dandy said. "One day, Ms. Wilkins said that she had enough with our behavior. She dragged us into the drawing room, locked us in, and left us there," Bonnie Blue proclaimed. Dandy looked up from his lap, his eyes a constant of sadness and misery. "We never left," he said. "We don't want the same for you," Rosie announced. "You made us happy, so we want you to be happy. We just got scared that you might move on the same path," Dandy said. I smiled at the TV, beaming happiness through their kind words. It was still a show at the end of the day, so I thought that this was their way of teaching courtesy and openness. "But we think it's time for us to say goodbye." My smile quickly dissipated into a slightly open mouth, my eyes wide with surprise. "You're getting old now, big and strong, just like your dad," Daisy exclaimed, her smile replacing mine. "We've taught you all we can, friend," Rosie said. I grasped the TV, words slowly bubbling into my throat of pleas for them to stay. "We always cared about you, even when you were with us back there," Bonnie Blue said. They all stood up and took each other's hands and smiled the widest smiles I'd ever seen them showcase. My head was pressed up against the glass panels separating me from them, my eyes a waterfall of emotion and distress. I begged for them not to leave. "Thank you for tuning in with us, friend," they all said. Slowly but surely, the screen faded to black, and in big white letters, the words "The End" covered the TV. Then it cut to static. All that remained was me, weeping and shattered. Years later, on my 16th birthday, after a big party with my closest friends, of whom I had many of at that point, my mom called me into the living room. I thought that maybe there was another present waiting for me, so I eagerly waltzed into the room, with an immense pep in my step. But my mom did not share my enthusiasm. She looked sullen and tense. "Sit down, please," she said, her voice controlled and centered, yet anxious. I complied, my own appearance visibly moving downwards into a look of paralleled seriousness. "I know that it's your big day, but we need to talk about something. Something I've been meaning to tell you for a while." What proceeded to be said to me shook the core of my world forever. My mom told me that, while it was true that my dad had died in a botched robbery, he wasn't truly my real dad, and that she wasn't my real mom. I had lost my original family a year after I was born in a car accident on the freeway after a truck had lost control and slammed into the side of their car. They died on impact. I was lucky as I had been at daycare, which they were coming to pick me up from. I had no extended family, so I was put in the foster care program and adopted by a woman named Ms. Wilkins, who was a boarding school teacher in her past. According to Mom, she was an extremely cruel woman who would regularly beat her adopted children for the littlest of reasons, ranging from breathing too loud to having a cough. One day, however, she went too far when 4 of her children, after supposedly protecting me from a vicious beating, were locked in a room for a week. They didn't come back out. The other kids, including myself, were not let out of the house after that to avoid any of us telling another person what she had done to them. Eventually, the neighbors noticed how we weren't ever leaving and called the police. Ms. Wilkins was sentenced to life in prison. I was stunned, unable to move, as though I was locked in place by my feet. Take as much time as you need to process this. I'm right here, my mother said. As my mind began to make sense of it all, I started having sparks fire off in my brain. Ms. Wilkins. I could have swore I knew that name from somewhere. Wilkins. 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 And then, it hit me like a boulder rolling down a hill. Ms. Wilkins, the teacher from the show. I rushed out of the living room, up to my bedroom, and threw my computer open with almost lightning-fast speed. I looked up the case, typing everything I could in, praying I could find something. 4 of the 5 searches propped up generic results of other heinous foster parents, but then, on my 5th search, I found it. Boarding school teacher charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder after locking children in room. I scrolled through the article, and everything aligned with what my mom had said. There was no mention of my name anywhere, but the presence of them defending another kid was in the article. Along with it, photos of the drawings they made while locked inside were posted onto the article itself. All pictures of them as flowers. At the bottom, it listed the names of the deceased children. My heart sank and my jaw followed its motion. Rosalina Matthews, Bonnabel Lee, Daisy McMullen, Daniel Morello. I had no words. I had no movement. It felt as though the world itself had spun upside down, and I was bearing the brunt of it. Snapping out of my haze, I looked up the cartoon. I searched for what felt like hours. Nothing. Not a single mention of any show titled Dandy's Wondrous Adventures. It made no sense. What the hell was I watching then? Did I imagine it? Was I going through some sort of trauma-induced hallucination? It shattered what little grip on reality I had left at that moment. Their names, the show, the antagonist of that one rainy day. It all neatly funneled into this one case that I had apparently been involved with when I was just a toddler. And yet, it only added more complexities. And more emotions. Fear. Confusion. Sadness. Empathy. And finally, courage. I'm 28 now, and I have been an animator for over 8 years. Recently, I pitched the idea for Dandy's Wondrous Adventures to the board, and just yesterday it was approved. I did it for them. Whether or not the show I watched was real, this one will be, and I wanted to help people just like me. Just like them. I've never told anyone this story, and I never planned to, until today. As of writing this, I received an envelope at my door from an anonymous writer. All it says on the front of the envelope is, "From your friends." Inside the envelope was a crumpled, old, worn piece of paper. It looked as though it had been set out in the sun for years. On one side of the paper was a drawing, as though it was made by a kid. Or rather, a group of kids, as the styles are all different. It looked fresh, completely out of place with the worn-down canvas that had been used. On the drawing is them, the characters. They all adorn beautiful white wings and halos above their heads. while a small, pretty purple butterfly guides them towards the sun. All of them are hand in hand, just like the last time I saw them. On the back, in four corners of the paper, in yellow, indigo, red, and white, was the same phrase again and again, yet the meaning and significance of the phrase remained constant. Thank you. In the middle, a heart presented itself, with it colored in quadrants, the same colors used for the messages. Thank you too, friends.